worked at a local 24/7 pizza shop in my mid-20s. It wasn't great food, but being open all night attracted intoxicated customers throughout the evening. I often worked alone and preferred it. The food was simple to make, and during slow periods I could do whatever I wanted. This Tuesday night seemed like any other. I came in at 9 p.m., took over from the day manager, and prepped workstations. With it being Tuesday, I expected a chill night. I got a few customers in the first couple hours, then it went completely silent. No walk-ins or calls. I sat in the back kitchen scrolling my phone for the next hour. Around 1 a.m., I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and walked to the front counter, but stopped as soon as I could see the main room. Nobody was there. I stood looking side to side, but there wasn't anyone at all. I smiled, thinking I must be so used to hearing that sound all night that my brain was playing tricks on me. I went back to my chair. 15 minutes later, it rang again. This time, I wasn't watching anything when it happened, so I knew I actually heard it. I walked into the main room, but nobody was there again. I went outside and stuck my head out, looking up and down the sidewalk. Nobody was out there, not even cars in the parking lot. I messed with the door, trying to see if it would ring without opening, but it didn't seem to. I stayed up front for 30 minutes, waiting for it to happen again, but it never did, so I went back to the kitchen. Between 2 and 3 a.m. was always the slowest time. Once I was in back again, only minutes passed before the door rang again. I stayed sitting and listened, not hearing anything. "Hello, is someone out there?" I called out. No response. I figured it was just the door malfunctioning, so I ignored it and stayed on my phone. There wasn't a single customer for the next whole hour. At 4 a.m., I had to start prepping for the next shift. I went to the front and started counting the register from my few early orders. While there, I felt strange, like something was off. I kept looking up at the empty room ahead and back at the kitchen behind me, feeling like I was being watched. I thought it was just the unusual nature of the night with the door situation. Another couple minutes went by when I suddenly heard a thump on the floor behind me, just like a boot stepping on the ground. It instantly sent chills through me and made me quickly turn around. I felt my breath leave my lungs. There was a man standing just 5 or 6 feet away. He had all black ripped clothes and a hoodie draping over his face, stopping above his bloodshot, hollow eyes. He clearly wasn't sane, drunk, high, or something worse. Then I saw his left hand holding a knife, knuckles white from how tightly he was clenching it. I stayed motionless, trying not to escalate anything. After several seconds of him not moving and just staring, I decided to speak. "Hey, listen, you can have the cash from the register. I won't say anything. Please, just let me go." He just stood there with that 1,000-yard stare, still clenching the knife. I was terrified because he wasn't some normal guy. There was no predicting what he might do. The counter was L-shaped, extending toward the back where he stood. To run away, I'd have to run toward him and around the counter, then back to the front door. I ran out the door with him close behind, making it to the road, hoping a car might drive by to help. At some point, he stopped chasing, I don't know when, because I was focused on sprinting without looking back. I called police and waited at the road. It took about 5 minutes for them to arrive. The guy was gone, but after chasing me, he'd gone back inside and demolished the place, then left out the back door where he scraped his knife all over my car. He was likely watching me through windows from a distance, using the door as a distraction to slip in unnoticed. It worked perfectly, which makes me feel dumb. There was about an hour between the last door ring and when I saw him, so he was probably hiding inside the whole time. His actions seemed oddly directed at me rather than random, but I had no idea who he was. They never found him, and I didn't work there much longer, fearing he might return.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
A couple years ago, I was working 2 jobs to save for a condo, a stable 9 to 5 and deliveries whenever I had time, sometimes 30 hours a week of deliveries after work. This night, I started delivering at 6:30 after dinner. It was going really well with good orders and tips, so I kept working even though I should have taken a break. By 11 p.m. it had slowed down, but I was greedy and wanted to end on a good order. Finally, a decent one came up, almost $20 for a 15-minute delivery. I accepted it immediately. After getting the food, I headed to the address. The roads were quiet and empty, taking me toward a wooded section of town I didn't know had houses. I double-checked my route several times to make sure I was going the right way. The final turn was onto a well-maintained gravel road going into forest. I drove until reaching a gate, 2 pillars with a chain running between them. The chain wasn't up, so I drove through. My headlights couldn't see far ahead, but past the gate I pulled into a parking area. I was confused. This definitely wasn't leading to a house. I parked and looked around. There was a sign indicating this was a forest preserve. I delivered to parks before, but thought preserves closed around 8 or 9 p.m., and I didn't see anyone to deliver to. My phone started ringing, the customer. I picked up to hear a deep, gravelly male voice that was hard to understand. He said he saw I'd parked and asked if I could see him. I said no. He explained he was camping with buddies down one of the trails and I should spot their campfire if I walked closer. When I mentioned preserves being closed, he said this one allowed overnight camping certain days. Not being outdoorsy, I did know better and saw no reason he'd lie. I turned off my car and got out with his food, using my phone as a flashlight since it was really dark. Only one trail led from the parking area, so I couldn't get lost. I started walking in the quiet night, just wind and crickets. I expected to hear a group talking and laughing, but didn't. Then I saw the light, an orange flame glowing and flickering in the trees. Oddly, it wasn't on the path or right off it, but far out among all the trees with no direct path leading to it. As I got closer, things got strange. First, I heard no voices. Second, once closer, I saw no one. It was just a small campfire burning in the middle of nothing. No chairs, no tents, literally nothing. I barely whispered, "What the hell?" before hearing a stick snap somewhere in the trees. I jerked my head toward the sound. Someone was there, too far for light to reach, and the faint figure was standing still like trying not to be seen. "Hey, I'm the delivery driver. I'll just put your order here," I yelled, setting the bag down. They suddenly showed themselves and walked toward me. The man was tall with dark hair and scruffy beard, that same gravelly voice from the phone. His smile was disturbing, like he was faking it. It was strange he only revealed himself once he knew I saw him. Nothing added up. As he got closer, I just decided to turn and run. He called out several times in this creepy, overly nice voice, asking me to come back and saying he had cash for me. I didn't stop until reaching the car, fumbling with shaky hands to get my keys and turn it on. I backed out and pulled onto the gravel path to leave, but had to slam my brakes. The chain was now latched across the pillars, blocking my exit. I stared too long trying to decide if I could unlatch it when I heard footsteps coming up behind my car. I didn't look, just floored it onto the grass around the pillars. It was a tight squeeze with a short ditch really close to the sides, but I made it back onto gravel and sped away. I never saw any other vehicle, which makes their intentions likely really disturbing.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
It was spring break, and I was 18. My family, me, my mom, and my 7-year-old brother, took a trip to a small cabin in Minnesota. We planned to stay the whole week and scout smaller towns for a potential future move. The cabin my mom booked was really remote, about 35 minutes from any shopping areas. After a 10-hour drive, we arrived at sunset to see orange skies setting over dense forest and wildlife, a stark contrast to the skyscrapers we were used to. The cabin was noticeably old, with everything creaking, but it had character. We settled in for the night, testing the wood-burning fireplace and resting after the long drive. My mom went to bed around 8:30, but since I'd napped earlier, I stayed up later. I decided to get fresh air on the back porch, a small wooden deck with a sketchy-looking fire pit and a few chairs. The night was incredibly quiet, just occasional bird calls and rustling trees. Being further north, it was chilly, so I spotted logs stacked beside the cabin and lit up the fire pit. I sat there for about 30 minutes, soaking in this rare, peaceful experience. Then suddenly, a completely unexpected sound echoed from within the forest. I couldn't identify it, but it sounded like an axe chopping into wood. Just one sharp crack. It was pitch black out there, and the sound seemed pretty close. Over the next 5 minutes, an uneasy feeling built up, ruining the previous peacefulness. I snuffed out the fire and headed inside. My mom and brothers seemed to be asleep already. Still not tired, I stayed in the living room watching a downloaded movie on my phone. About 15 minutes in, I heard something and paused the film. It could have been the cabin creaking or wind hitting walls, but it gave me that uneasy feeling again. A minute later, I heard it again from the opposite end, outside the wall next to me, where only a window existed. Then a loud sequence of knocks shook the front door, vibrating across the wooden walls. I froze as my mom hurried into the hallway asking what that was. I told her someone was at the door, while she immediately went to call 911. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. In the extremely dark night with no porch lights, I could see the basic figure of a man standing close to the door, staring ahead. In the darkness, I could make out the outline of a heavy wooden axe in his hand. Everything rushed through my mind as he banged on the door several more times, never speaking or stating any excuse. Then came what we were all terrified of. One loud crack slammed into the door as the metal axe pierced through the wood. We all ran into the farthest room and locked ourselves in, hearing more hits before they stopped. It took just under 15 minutes for police to arrive. The front door had several large gashes, but no signs of him having gotten inside or where he went.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories.
I live in northern Utah, on the edge of a small highway town. After finishing work around 6, I headed into town to grab groceries. The stores were never crowded in our quiet highway town, so I expected a routine shopping trip. While browsing the aisles, I noticed a guy looking at me. At first, I thought nothing of it, probably just an awkward timing coincidence. But then I saw him again in a different aisle, standing just 5 or 6 feet away from me. He wasn't moving around or grabbing anything, just staring. I said hi, but he didn't respond. I hurried up and left the aisle. At checkout, I dismissed him as just some weird trucker running on no sleep. But when I got to my car in the back of the parking lot, there he was again, standing between cars, looking in my direction. He had no groceries, so he clearly hadn't even checked out. I drove home to my 40-acre property as the sun set, making the empty dirt roads dark and quiet. After bringing in the first load of groceries, I got sidetracked by a phone call from my dad. When I went back outside for the rest, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Far off the side of the dirt road, silhouetted against the night sky, was a truck with its lights off. It definitely wasn't there when I'd driven home. If someone was just lost or turning around, why park with no lights on my property? I grabbed my groceries while keeping an eye on the truck, then went inside and opened the front curtains to monitor the situation. Over the next hour, I convinced myself it was probably just a tired driver sleeping instead of paying for a motel. The truck never moved. I went to bed around midnight, but woke up around 2 or 3 a.m. needing the bathroom. As soon as I opened the door, I heard a creak downstairs, something I'd never heard before. Looking down the dark stairwell, I saw a shadow moving slightly on the hallway wall. My heart started pounding. I quietly backed into my room, closed the door carefully, and called police. For 5 minutes, I heard nothing. Then came the slow, subtle creaking of someone walking across the floor below me, heading toward the living room. When the cop car arrived, I heard a scurry of footsteps running around downstairs before leaving what sounded like the back door. The officers caught him running back toward that truck in the field. It was the creepy guy from the store. He was armed and claimed he was just trying to rob me, but he'd taken nothing and had no backpack.
He knew I was home and had probably been watching me all night from outside. What he really would have done is better left unknown. The realization that I've been stalked and my home invaded by this stranger still haunts me to this day.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. I work at a data center in a small warehouse complex. My job is monitoring systems overnight and restarting anything that goes down. It's simple work, and since it's just me, I can do whatever I want while checking system status. This particular night, I drove to the office at my usual 10 p.m. The building was at the end of a long road backed up to trees, so there were never any cars or people around. I settled in and started binging a Netflix show. About 2 hours in, a notification popped up. One system had lost connection. I walked downstairs through multiple corridors to the huge storage room with massive rows of shelves. The notification gave me a row and section number in the very last aisle, far corner. Strangely, it was obvious why it was down. The main power cable was laying on the ground like it had been pulled out. In all my years on this job, I'd never seen a heavy-duty cable randomly fall out. They just don't do that. I plugged it back in and booted up the system. Everything came back online properly. The only explanation was that it somehow wiggled out over time and happened to fall out tonight. I did a quick walkthrough of other aisles, then started heading back through the corridors to the office. In one corridor, I heard an unfamiliar sound, almost like a heavy door thumping closed. It was creepy in the otherwise silent building. This was a massive warehouse, and metal pipes often bent and creaked in walls, making similar sounds. But this exact sound was new to me. Back in the office, I sat down and double-checked systems before continuing my show. Only minutes passed before I heard fast-paced footsteps scurrying through the corridor next to me. It gave me a jump scare. I opened the door and looked down the hallway. Nothing there, just an empty corridor with a door at the far end. But it had sounded right outside my office. I walked toward the end and opened that door. Looking down the next hallway, I barely caught sight of the door on the other end closing, like someone had just gone through it. My heart was pounding now. I cautiously walked further and opened that door to find a hallway with multiple office doors. "Is someone in here? Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed through the corridor. I took a few steps inside, but it was eerily quiet. Were they hiding in one of these rooms? As that thought crept in, I got really unsettled and decided not to go further. I took one step back toward the door, but just then, one of the office doors next to me swung open. I only caught a glimpse of a man running out of the dark room before I turned and ran. I could hear his footsteps echoing behind me as I made it to the corridor and staircase. Not wanting to risk getting trapped, I took the fire exit and ran into the parking lot. Once near my car, I called police. The guy didn't chase me out the same exit, though. Police did an extensive search taking nearly half an hour, but he was gone, probably escaped through different exits into the woods behind the building. His presence explained the disconnected wire from earlier. He'd likely bumped into it while sneaking around that corner section. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you dare to hear more chilling stories. I was camping at a small lake for the weekend. Nothing special, just a few days in the woods by water to relax. It was pretty remote, with only a thin footpath leading to it, unmarked on any online maps. Only locals would know about it. My dad used to take me here as a kid, and in all those years, I'd never seen another person or even signs that anyone else had been there. The first day was exactly what I wanted. I set up camp and chilled. On the second day, I spent hours walking around the water, circling the lake 3 or 4 times. During those peaceful hours, everything was quiet and nice. But on one of my laps, I spotted footprints in the dirt at the treeline edge. I'd been walking the same circle repeatedly and never saw them before. They were so clear and obvious I couldn't have missed them. They also looked fresh. What was really strange wasn't just that somebody else was out here, but that they were literal footprints, barefoot, not shoe prints. This part of the lake didn't have easy water access, so it's not like someone took their boots off to swim.
I would have seen them in the lake anyway. This really creeped me out. Why didn't I see them while walking around? Were they watching me without wanting to be seen? It was hard not to get paranoid. From what I could tell, the footprints went up to the tree line looking out at the lake, then straight back into the woods for quite a distance. I didn't want to follow them into unknown forest territory, so I walked back to my campsite. I kept looking toward the tree line around the lake, seeing if anyone was out there, but never saw anyone. As the sun started setting, the paranoia built up again. Something about those footprints felt off, and knowing they were likely still nearby wasn't comforting. When it got darker, I fueled up my campfire with plenty of wood and sat around it, trying to keep my mind off the situation. Part of me felt justified in feeling uneasy, while another part felt like I was overreacting. Not far into the night, I heard footsteps approaching from the trees. I instantly turned toward the darkness they were coming from. There were more than one. It sounded like two people slowly walking closer to my campsite. I stared in their direction until they suddenly came into the firelight. It was a man and woman walking side by side, stopping just at the edge where the light could reach. I couldn't see much of their faces or tell their ages, just basic shapes. "Can I help you?" I asked. As soon as I said that, the woman turned and sprinted back into the woods, completely disappearing. But the man stayed where he was without moving or looking back at the woman. I looked down and realized he wasn't wearing shoes. These were definitely the ones from the lake. I asked again if I could help him, but he too turned around and quietly walked back into the woods. I had an internal freakout after that encounter. It was the most unsettling and strange thing I'd ever experienced, almost not feeling real. I didn't want to be in those woods another second. I packed everything within minutes and started the nearly 2-hour walk back to my truck through the dark forest.
If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't vanish into the darkness without hitting that like button. Share your scariest experience in the comments below, because your story might be featured next. And remember, the scariest thing is missing out. So subscribe now before the next nightmare finds you.